All right, guys, welcome back to Modern Masters Auto. Today, we have the C55. It's been in a couple videos, and boy, does it deserve it. This C55 comes from Mercedes with a naturally aspirated, high compression M113. One of the most famous Mercedes motors ever, highest mileage tank of an engine. I love the engine. My ML55 has one. My E55 has a supercharged one. My SL55, I just love this engine. It's the best. So we took that and we ripped it out. And then we took an M113 block, we CNC'd out the cylinders, put in Darton sleeves, forged pistons, forged rods, everything to handle the boost. And speaking of boost, this right here, the VRP M113K supercharger. It's a Whipple supercharger that utilizes factory surge tanks, factory intercooler, and has a billet snout with a Hellcat throttle body. It's just awesome. I love it. This thing is cool. We have a lot going on here. We also 7-speed swapped it, so it uses a 7-speed transmission from the newer generation cars. So it's way better to drive on the highway. It's twice as fast. It's just an amazing transmission. It's the way these should have came. I mean, it is incredible how they drive. I have it in my E55. I love it. The thing rips. And with all that power, you know you're gonna need stopping power. So we added a full C63 big brake kit. It utilizes C63 calipers, E63 rear calipers, and it's just gonna give it massive stopping power and really just aesthetically look like the AMG that it should have been. This thing has been going through its headers, beautiful exhaust, but now that we're this far, Rusty is gonna be buttoning a few things up with you guys while I'm in Florida on a tow. So I hope you guys enjoy your time with Rusty, and I'll check in a few times on my journey because I'm picking up a 507 sedan. So we have huge things going on right now, awesome things, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Take this time right now to please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share with your friends. That is how we get to keep doing this, and we will keep doing it as long as you guys keep commenting and responding. All of that means a lot to us. So without further ado, let's get started. Oh, look at this, guys. We got the VRP Whipple, we got the factory surge tanks, we got powder coated valve covers, we have a fuel pressure gauge, we have VRP's belt wrap kit, we have a billet crank pulley that's drilled into the crank, new condenser, oil cooler, trans cooler, secondary heat exchanger, primary heat exchanger, some fresh new headlights. This thing is just amazing. Look at that. We got the Whipple pulley, and then we have the Modern Masters ARP Whipple pulley bolts that we get in-house, especially for our Whipple guys. Are you ready to dive into this one, Rusty?
I'm ready.
He's ready. All right. We're waiting on some few parts. We got some of that in. I've been doing some mad scientist coding to this car. So this thing is going to be super unique, and I'm excited for it to hit the streets. In this video, in the end of it, we'll get to crank it for the first time. We'll get to push fluids through it for the first time, and maybe drive it for the first time. So I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, guys, little backstory on the C55 project. We had a employee that we hired a while back. He seemed to have plenty of performance knowledge, seemed very professional. So one of the tasks I gave him was to help me complete the C55. I made it super easy. I said, hey, I'm gonna pull my C55 next to this. I personally have a C55, it's supercharged. Basically the same setup as this, 7-speed swap. I don't have a Whipple though, I just have the factory supercharger on there, but the exact same cooling setup. I said, hey man, this would be straightforward for you. I just need you to make this car look just like my car. Everything's thought out, you don't have to test fit anything. I gave him the parts. I said, just make everything the same. And unfortunately, this is what we're with. Things weren't really ran correctly. I don't even think most of the cooling even got hooked up. It should have been a super simple thing. I was very disappointed when I came to check the progress on there. But luckily, every project that leaves Modern Masters, I personally go over it and check everything. Usually, during the process, but especially before the customer leaves, I'll take it for a nice long test drive, extended test drive. Sometimes I'll even drive the car home. We like to put about 100 miles on a car before it leaves the shop, and I'll look it over myself on a lift just to make sure everything is up to my standards. And this, unfortunately, was not. So I get the pleasure of redoing everything that he was paid to do. And we're gonna get this thing up to standard and hopefully get to start it up and drive it for the first time. So this has been a long project of ours. The customer's excited to get it back. And I know my car rips with just half of the mods that this one has. So this car is gonna be scary fast and I'm very excited for it. So I'm gonna give you a little tour of what we're working with here. Nothing too crazy. Got the billet crank pulley on the bottom there, VRP Whipple kit, and just, you know, this is what I'm talking about. You know, just laziness, just throwing these hoses on here. This is also supposed to be a nice new hose. They were even rubbing the alternator, it looks like. Luckily, this car hasn't started up yet. That would have torn these hoses, but, you know, stuff like this, that's not even hooked up. These things doesn't take much time to hook these things up, especially when there's a perfect example parked right next to it. All you have to do is just copycat exactly how my car was ran. But I'll get it done, and it was just a setback, and unfortunately, these things kind of happen in the aftermarket industry. So let's go through everything and see what we find. Okay, enough of the complaining for a while, but check out the 63 big brake kit conversion. Looking fresh, fits perfect. I do still have to get the wear sensors to wire in correctly, but I'm gonna try to get the engine running first. But huge improvement for this car. Joey did an excellent job on the exhaust. That's completely finished. This thing's gonna sound great. America. Let's go ahead and wrap up the cooling system first. We have split cooling with dual heat exchangers, VRP heat exchangers. Looks like that one's mounted a little off center, of course. So I'll be fixing that, routing everything correctly, and finishing hooking everything up. I'm gonna clean this up the best I can, and if there's anything too crazy, I'll just rip it all out and start from scratch. Okay, so anytime you're doing split cooling, you wanna have your reservoir up top, which is already mounted correctly, thank goodness. And you want that reservoir to feed the pump. So if you can have it go directly to the pump, that's the best. But what I like to do is, just because you have this 90 here, I like to have the reservoir come down, it tees into this system here, and it's gonna feed this heat exchanger up front here. That's just going to just, by gravity, is going to feed the pump. Never had a problem doing it this way. Don't have to worry about bleeding it too much. And then that way you have constant flow to your pump, and the pump will push through everything else and makes bleeding much easier. So let's get this hose on the pump. And then this hose here will come out of the heat exchanger and feed the pump, just like factory on the 113K cars, which this is now a 113K car with a Whipple. Got some nice new fresh hose. This is going to run down to the outlet of the Superflow pump. Give us a little extra for some slack, and say right about there. And now we have to run the other side. This is going to loop the whole way around up to the inlet of the intercooler for the supercharger. And I'll be replacing these little hoses here since they're coming so close to the alternator. And we're gonna run that down here. Just watch our angles of the hoses, make sure they don't kink or anything. Make sure they're not going to come in contact with anything once the bumper is reinstalled. This vibrant hose is great for that. It's really good at not kinking unless you go for a really tight bend. We're gonna push it up through here. And once I get this close, I'm gonna go ahead and remove these factory hoses here. Well, not factory this car, but factory 113K hoses. And I'm just gonna start from scratch, just so it'd look a lot better. Okay, so I ripped those factory hoses out. I changed a few things. I ended up routing the hose that comes from this reservoir straight down through there behind the headlight. It goes straight into a T that feeds the front heat exchanger here that leads to the pump. Then I have the other T coming from the heat exchanger. It's empty down here, so I just need to make another hose. And then this is the hose that wraps all the way around from the secondary heat exchanger around the bottom of the car, and we're gonna put it right here. I just gotta go see if I can find some nice clamps for that, and then run this second hose, which is the outlet, down to that other T, and it'll be nice and cleaned up. Nothing rubbing the alternator, not even close. Nice and clean here. It's not all bunched up like it was before. And let me throw that hose on there and see what it looks like. Last connection on the hose. Make sure we got the right length. I like it right about there. I'll try to give myself about an inch of wiggle room, just in case I need to flex some things out of the way a little bit when I put the bumper on. It's a pretty tight fit, so give us a little bit of lube, help that hose slide on there a little bit better. And then we double clamp these with these nice factory style clamps, just to make sure there's no chance of any leaks. Let's see how I want to do this. I think I'm going to run it behind this hose. Make sure these added hoses aren't going to push these factory hoses anywhere near the alternator or any of the belts, but it looks like we have plenty of room. So we'll slide and push that sucker in there. And it looks like I need to do some finagling to get this to fit into the factory bracket, but it'll be okay for right now until I get that all together. But let's go ahead and clamp this down. Nice and tight, no movement. We have our secondary hooked up with nice new vibrant hose. Wraps all the way underneath behind the front heat exchanger. Back up to the intercooler. Nice and clean looking. Not a bunch of hoses shoved in there like it was before. Reservoir goes down right behind the headlight. You can't even see the hose to it. Much better. Just wish it would have been done that easily the first time. So moving on.
All right, guys, we have made it to Florida. Got the trailer ready to pick up this 507. All right, guys, so I'm down in Florida and my left turn signal wire pulled out from somewhere. So I went ahead and crimped on a wire crimp. Got some supplies. I don't know if you can see it, that's Walmart. Just a couple things, some wire, a zip tie to hold it up, connection to bridge it, and then some cutters and crimpers and all that stuff. So we're gonna make a new connection so I can have my turn signal back. And to give me some more room, I got this handy dandy multi-tool device. I'll put it in front of the tire and then drive over it, and it will raise this whole side up so I can get under there easy and work. Makes it a lot simpler when you're doing a tire change or any repairs under the trailer. All right, guys, I have it set up, and now I'm gonna pull forward and you're gonna see how nice it is. Raise that tire. All right, I guess if you want ultimate lift, you can do it like that, but I'm gonna back it up just a little bit more just to make it safe. That truck looks just like my truck. Double vision. All right, guys, see how much more it raised it? And then also, when you put it on this tire, if this tire would have been blown out or vice versa, it lifts it off the ground, which you want to do in your lug nuts first, but then you can remove the trailer tire, put the spare on, and be rocking and rolling with minimal effort thanks to that little guy right there. All right, let's climb under here, see where it came from. It seems to be in this loom somewhere. You gotta find where this, oh, you know what? I bet you it was this ground. Maybe it's just this ground. I know that looks like it. All right, guys, I cut the end of it off because I suspect this is a ground, and we're gonna test it out. I got my 4-ways on right now. Nothing here. Let me find a good grounding spot. Oh, yep, that is a good ground right there. This is a ground wire. All right, guys, there's a little bit of room left to snug this in there and pinch it tight. So let's see if that did it. And we're good. We're back in business. All right, I was able to secure it up a little bit higher with zip ties. I got these rollers I installed, so when the dovetail gets real low, it hits the rollers and stays away from the wiring. But it looks like this is what broke and got weak, so we'll replace that when we get back. Looks like here's even an old one, but yeah. All right, now we're gonna slowly back down. And look at that. And then you'll just pull it out just like that. So you could replace that tire, you could do whatever, but that is perfect. This thing is awesome. I'll put a link in our Amazon store, but I do not tow without this thing. We're gonna have to give Mr. Rusty a call and check on him, see how things are going back at the shop. But as far as me, I took the kids to Disneyland while I'm on this Orlando tow to get a really rare car. I'm excited to show you guys. All right. That is Craig reporting live here in Orlando, Florida.
All right, guys, so ever since we started installing these VRP Whipple kits on the 113K platform, we get phone calls all the time by people who are trying to install them themselves on how to install a catch can, how to run a PCV system, because it is a little tricky. And ever since we started making these videos, everyone's been begging us to do a how-to video of how to install a catch can on a 113K. So what better opportunity? So I'm gonna go ahead and run you guys through this to install the catch can on the VRP Whipple kit. It's a little different on just a factory 113K, but it's very similar. So you should get the idea, but make sure you pay attention because I'm only showing you guys this once. And of course, I'm just kidding. If you have any questions, just ask us in the comments or message us on our email. We try to do our best to respond to anyone for any questions they have, especially on a video that we have recently released. So let's just go through a little tour here to give you a better idea. So the factory PCV system runs from valve cover to valve cover. So I have ran a hose from valve cover to valve cover. It no longer goes into a port on the back of the throttle body like factory because the Hellcat throttle bodies do not have a port there. So that's what makes this difficult, is finding out how to reroute this. So what I like to do is I just go ahead and run a vacuum hose from each port on each valve cover, side to side. And what I'll do is I'll find a nice spot to cut here and add a T, and that T will eventually lead to vacuum. But since we're running a catch can on this vehicle, it's a little bit different. And we also want to tie in the evap line. So you gotta be careful where you add this. I don't like the idea of the evap making its way into the catch can. You don't want fuel to collect in there. So what we're gonna do is we're going to have our PCV system vent to the catch can, which I'm going to mount right about here. There it is. And that's gonna run into a T for the evap, which will then be sucked in by vacuum through the vacuum port here, which VRP gives you plenty of options to add a fitting any which way you like. And then if you have a vehicle that has a vacuum brake booster like this one, just don't plumb any of the vacuum lines into the vacuum for the brake booster. Just for safety, leave that one alone so it has its own dedicated vacuum source. No one's gonna get hurt if you lose vacuum to your catch can, but big problems if you lose vacuum to your brake booster, because this is gonna be really hard to stop going as fast as it can go. So let's move forward. Not really much needed. You'll need your catch can, obviously. So you get your catch can. It comes with the nice fittings that you can select for whatever size hose you want to use. We're going to use 3/8 hose today. So I have plenty of hose, I have plenty of clamps, and then you're going to need 2 T's. I like to use the metal ones. I have used the plastic ones in the past, which will work, but if I do have the metal ones and they are available, they're much stronger and last much longer. So when everything's set up, I'll walk you through routing everything and show you how easy it is. Now we're gonna find a good spot to cut this hose to add our T. I like the idea of the T coming down away from any intake system we're gonna add here later on. So right about here looks good to me. Go ahead and put clamp on first. I make that mistake all the time, especially with brake fittings. You will never flare a more perfect looking flare until the time that you forgot to put the flare nut on first. So that looks pretty good there. Go ahead and reconnect our other side. Actually, I might want to, let's move the fuel line later. Put our clamp on first, push that in. And I'm not gonna crimp these until everything's ran, just so if I wanna twist the fittings, make them fit a little bit nicer. So final fitment, I'll crimp them, but let's just get the lines ran. We want them for right now. So go ahead and grab some hose. I almost forgot my clamp again. Push that bad boy up there. We're gonna try and tuck that out of the way. I need to remake this line anyway. I don't really like the way it fits. So eventually I'm gonna push this down, and then the fuel line will hold all of this down out of the way so it looks a lot nicer and cleaner. And let's run this down here, right about to where our catch can is going to be. Put it right here. Give yourself a little bit of slack. I am gonna be making a bracket to hold this catch can here nice and neatly. Let's say right about there. Always try to give yourself another, inch or two of wiggle room. You can always trim the hose to make it fit a little better, but if you trim it too short, then you pretty much wasted that length of hose. You have to start over again. Get our clamp onto the catch can here. And then what I like to do is on the suction side, I'll start from the vacuum source back and just tee everything in. And then that way all I have to do is, once everything is nice and neat and fitted up here, I just have to run a hose straight to the catch can again. So let's start with that, get our clamp. Obviously, clamp first. You're gonna snake that through here. We're gonna push that down below the throttle body and then down this way. I like to keep the T's pretty much right next to each other, and it makes it look nice and clean. You don't wanna, just a bunched up mess. Okay, next we'll add our barb to the evap line. Try to get it in line here so it looks nice. Remember, this is a C55, your factory 113K car. Your evap line is gonna be ran a little bit different. So we're gonna turn that so it's in line here, and that's gonna run just down there like that, right next to the other line. And then keep in mind, you're gonna have a T fitting come through here for the intakes. They're gonna come right around here. So make sure everything's below that. You don't want your hoses laying on top of here like this because they will get kinked. So make sure you have plenty of room back here for all of the intake hoses to run through. And that looks real good right about there. Watch your fingers. Clamp. Clamp on the other end. And now all we have to do is run some line down to the catch can area. I'm gonna cut it right about here. I'm gonna go ahead and undo this fuel line just so you guys can see how nice and clean that will look with all that's tucked in there and completely out of the way. Get a rag down to catch your fuel. I can tell you this, there's plenty of fuel pressure. So we'll bring this fuel line up here. Now it's clamping time. And we really do love these clamps. They just look so nice. And another thing is they don't bunch up like this. You have a bunch of them in place. Your hands don't get caught on them like the hose clamps and cut you, and they don't scratch stuff. You're moving things around and they're nice and smooth. So it really helps when you're trying to get several hoses right next to each other. You don't have that extra metal hanging off of there like a regular hose clamp. All right guys, got all the clamps together. Let's check it out. So I have everything tucked down here, nice and neat and flush with the valve cover. You'll note that this hose is not here. So this is just the vent that will go and be plumbed into the air intake that will come here. There's a barb that we weld in the bottom of the intake and that will go to this. So I have before just ran the 90 factory hose here and put a breather on top. About a 50% chance that you're gonna have a throttle body code if you do that. So we try to get a fitting welded on the bottom of the intake after we make that, and that will go in there and you'll have no codes. So just to recap, you have vacuum coming from behind the throttle body down into a splitter for the evap. So the evap gets sucked straight into the throttle body, goes down around to the catch can, and then it sucks from the catch can to the T for your PCV. And all this T does is just join your two sides of the engine together, and that's it. So relatively simple. I do need to go try to find some of my sheet metal so I can make a bracket for this real quick, but the shop is still empty. All of our stuff is still moved out into a trailer from us repainting the floors. So it might take me a minute to go find that, but I'll get that mounted up right there nice and neat. I'll show it to you guys when I'm done. All right, so I made this super simple little bracket here. I finally found my piece of metal laying around, and I went ahead and tapped the holes going into the catch can. So I just ran a tap pre-existing hole right there. So all I have to do is thread some bolts in and tighten those up, get those tightened up, and it will mount down here nice and pretty and hold that perfectly still. Ka-chow, as Craig would say if he was here. Actually, hey Craig, I thought you were towing. I thought you were out of town on a long tow. Yeah, I just figured I'd stop in here and see how everything is going and check on you guys. Make sure you don't put ANCEL on that thing, it'll blow up. Oh, I'll make sure I don't. Don't want anything to happen to this bad boy. Local Molly only. But I hope everything's going well for you down there. Enjoy your trip. Yeah, everybody get back to work. All right, I'm gonna put you to sleep for a little bit. And enjoy your rest. You look tired. Let's keep going. I'm gonna mount this thing up and keep on trucking with wiring and coating and hopefully get this front bumper back together. Okay, so got the catch can all buttoned up, looking sharp, tucked out of the way, not gonna interfere with anything. Easy to get to check when it gets full. And then now I have the pleasure of trying to install the fan. On my C55, this was a nightmare to squeeze in there, and he has a big crank pulley, so I don't know how that's gonna fight me, but I hated trying to squeeze my fan in there. It bumps all these oil cooler hoses because the car wasn't designed for all this stuff to be in the way. So let's see if I can cram it in there without hopefully having to remove any of the pulleys, because I think that's what I did on mine. Oof. Got me. Ta-da! Let me show you how tight that thing fits in there. Just excuse the compressor running. Joey's been drilling some broken bolts over there, trying to drill them out. So say a prayer for him, but not much room to work with here. Super tight against all these hoses. but it does fit and it does clear everything. It's just really tight to get it in and out of there. Get it plugged in. I'm gonna try to get the front brace, get the hood latches working, just to make sure all stuff's lined up before I go to put the bumper on. All right guys, fan is installed, catch can is finished. So it's time for a commercial break. Today we have a tool that's going to help us check our work on our catch can install. We have a smoke machine. We have a smoke leak detector sent to us by ANCEL tools. This one is a really small one. It's probably the smallest one I've ever seen. A little different setup. Very nice, very compact, and it runs off shop air. So all the other ones we have here are electric. This one runs on shop air. So I'm excited to see how well it does. And you're just gonna plug it into this jump box down here. I don't like drawing from a car's battery. I like to put it on a jump box just to make sure I'm not going to wear down anyone's battery while I'm smoke testing it, especially a brand new one like this one. I'm going to hook the smoke machine to the outlet of the purge valve. So I'm going to disconnect this here, and this is going to go up into this T here, and it's going to smoke everything that we just installed. Get some shop air. All right, get everything going. Lots of smoke pouring out of there. It's just now getting warmed up. It does take a little bit for the element to get to full heat. That's pretty good flow coming out of this thing. That shop air is definitely helping push that through there. Let's hook it up. Man, it's really coming out of there now. Blow some of the smoke out of here so we don't confuse it as a leak. Oh, get out here, smoke. Get. Oh, right here, I got to cap off the valve cover. That smoke's ripping out of there already. Holy cow. I'm just gonna hold my thumb over that for right now. You can see I put a glove over the throttle body back here. It's starting to inflate that. Even back here at the brake booster, the vacuum line, as it blew it off. Like it's shooting out there like a teapot. Look at it. Look at that thing go. That's pretty good pressure for this little guy. But I don't see any leaks coming from our catch can area. I'm just blocking off the valve cover right here with my finger, since that's gonna be going into our intake anyway. But I don't see any leaks anywhere else. Nothing along the catch can area. Nothing in the Whipple kit. You know, there's a lot of places on the Whipple kits that they can leak out of. So I'll try to smoke test every one of these I do right after I install them, make sure there's no leaks. Just to make sure there's some smoke making it to our catch can here. Let's take this dipstick out. Jeez. So I can already tell you I'm a big fan of the smoke tester. Definitely puts out more pressure than any of the electric ones we have here so far. I was a little skeptical by seeing how small it was, but this little guy packs a punch, so I'm very impressed. And I'm also happy we have no leaks. Once again, ANCEL Automotive sent this to us to try out. I'm very impressed by it. Great little tool to have in the shop.
All right, guys, we're in sunny Florida, and we picked up the 507 sedan. This car is one of 5, and we are putting a VRP built motor in it. And this car, when I tell you this car is clean, this video will not even do it justice. I can't wait to get it back to the shop and really show it off. I mean, this thing is immaculate. Look at this awesome interior. Just amazing car. I'm super excited to build it all the way down here in Florida. And with this hot, sunny Florida weather, I don't go home without my legit street cars. Sunglasses, it really helps. It's super bright. I mean, oh, it's so freaking bright here. You can't leave home without these glasses. So legit street cars, legit street merch. You'll check them out. I'll put their link down below.
There are these bolts in here for this cross brace. Okay, so unfortunately I hit a little bit of a speed bump. I was test fitting the bumper, just to make sure I didn't have to adjust anything to get it fit correctly. And I noticed there was a big gap here between the headlight and the fender. So this I'm looking around and this bolt here wasn't tightened up. And this is what holds the bumper on. So you want to make sure these are nice and tight and help get everything aligned. So I took care of this side and I went to go tighten everything on this side. And of course the bolt broke off on me. So I went around, I spent some time trying to find this insert. This bolt will not come out of here. I tried vice grips, I tried everything. There's not enough for me to really get it out of there. But I looked around and I was able to find a replacement fitting out of another set of headlights that we have laying around. But unfortunately, I looked everywhere. I cannot find the bolt long enough for this. It is super long and super thin. It's an M5, really, really thin bolt. And you can see that this obviously holds the bumper on here. So unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to put the bumper on until I get a new one of these bolts, but seeing how rusty that bolt was anyway, it was bound to happen eventually. So I'm gonna get a new one of these bolts ordered from Mercedes. I'll be able to bolt that back up in there with the new piece that I found and get that bumper on there. But I'm still gonna try to get this car started for the first time. I gotta finish up a few things and that'll be that. Moving on to one of my favorite parts of this build. This is absolutely my favorite mod we do to the 55 platform, is the 5G to 7G swap. I love doing these. It took Craig and I a long time to figure this out and to get everything to work plug and play. So I used to have a bunch of wires and everything everywhere just to make this work. But now we're able to just offer this plug and play unit to where you plug in to your factory TCU and it converts it to plug in to the 7G. So I'm going to show you how to access this to remove your factory TCU, plug this in and route it to the new 7G transmission. Then we get to see if that 7th gear will show up for us on the dash. Not quite sure from there yet with coding and everything, but we might get lucky with this one. All right, so accessing your TCU is pretty easy. You just want to take the carpet back on the passenger side floor. So fold it back just like this. And there's a panel in here. Fold that down until you reach this foam layer here. So you're going to push the foam up and pull out, and that will slide out. And you'll have 3 10mm plastic nuts that you have to remove in order to get this panel to come out. Now that you've reached the panel and all the nuts are out, it does take a little bit of jostling to get it loose. You get to lift it up out of there. Sometimes it fights you hanging up on some other interior pieces, but just be careful. And you're going to lay that down flat like this, and that gets you access to your TCU. Sometimes it would be other like suspension modules, stuff like that in here. Leave all that alone. We're just trying to get to the TCU. And some body styles like a CL or an S55, they are located in different spots, usually underneath the hood on the passenger side fuse box. SLs are tucked up inside this kick panel here, so keep in mind that your location might vary for your TCU location. But E55, CLS, C55s, they're all underneath the floorboard here, which makes it super easy to access. So you're gonna grab an 8mm, and this is held on by 2 screws. And you can just unplug this TCU from the body here. I'm gonna grab my new one, and you're just going to replace that TCU with our conversion kit. All right, guys, I decided to bring you down in the trenches with me just so you can see a little bit better. Next, what you're gonna do is I already have disconnected from the transmission because, well, it doesn't exist anymore. So we're just gonna pop that out of there and pull the factory connector up through this hole. Ta-da! And this can actually stay in here, and that's its new home just laying back there. And we will be routing our connector for the 7G trans back through here. Give yourself a little bit of slack so that it can reach. I'd say we got about the same amount as the factory does on there now. And you'll slide this grommet down to match. Pops into place, which will be much easier with 2 hands. There she is. So let's go ahead and get it plugged in. And then just a quick tip, if say you're just servicing your factory TCU, check these connectors, see if they're wet, see if there's any signs of transmission fluid on them. A really common failure point with the 5G trans is the conductor plate will start to leak, and it will actually force transmission fluid up through this connector here, the whole way up inside of here and into your TCU. Last week I had an S55 in here that I literally poured about 1/4 cup of transmission fluid out of the TCU. I sent a picture of it to the customer. He didn't believe it, but we ended up servicing his conductor plate, put a new seal on the end of it there, and he got lucky. I was able to just take the cover off of the TCU, clean it out, dry it out, and everything was fine, which is usually the case. It has to be really bad for it to actually damage the TCU, but luckily we caught that one close enough. So we're gonna plug this in here just like factory, and that's it for the inside here. I'm gonna put this plate back up here. And next we gotta put the car in the air so I can plug the connector back into the transmission, but first I'm gonna zip these nuts back in here. All right guys, so the car's up in the air. We have the factory connector here for the 7G. Get that up in there to plug in. And I still remember the first time we did this, and to see that 7 show up on the dash for the transmission gear, that was an awesome moment.
How's it going? Because I coded that in the first time.
Oh, how's it doing down there, Craig?
Oh, you know, just picking up 507 AMGs with 7 speeds, just like what's in that C55 you're working on right now.
You're looking good.
Hey man, just down here in sunny Florida.
Looks like you've been skipping leg day though.
Yep, I picked up this 5
It's been better. I ran into a few snags, but overall, I think we're making good progress.
All right, good. It's good to hear. I don't want you getting behind while I'm down here working hard, picking up more AMGs to bring back to the shop.
Well, we could use some more. Where are you gonna park that thing?
I'm not sure, but I don't know if you've noticed, we have this 507 I'm bringing back, and another 507 actually dropped off outside. So if you want to show them that, a little preview of that white four-door 507 that's getting a VRP supercharger, that would be great. This 507 is getting a built motor, so I'm excited for all this stuff coming to the channel. But this is a 1 of 5 507 with a rare color sedan. So I'll show you guys that. And I'm on my way back to the shop right now. I'll see you guys soon.
All right, see you then. All right, guys, and since this is a fresh built engine, you don't want to start it up dry. I like to crank the engine, disable the injectors and fuel pump, and crank it to build some oil pressure before we start it for the first time. So let's see if it cranks. Okay, so definitely sounds healthy. Good compression. You can hear the compression whenever you crank the engine over. I'm probably gonna crank it a few more times before we start it for the first time. I also want to get everything a once over, make sure there's no leaks, no fuel leaks, and then we'll get this thing fired up and we'll tune it before we start it for the first time and hear this thing purr. So I'm excited to get this one going. That's all the time I'm going to have to put into this for this video, and we will continue in part 2. All right, guys, that's all we're gonna have time for this episode of the C55. I'm excited to get this one on the road.
All right, guys, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up.
Share with your friends.
And subscribe. But as always, leave a comment about my best friend Rusty in the comments.
All right, Anthony, put this part in right after I get the fan to go in and before I start putting the brace on. I forgot to do the commercial brake.
This thing's getting a built engine from Modern Masters. Oh, I got beeped at. This thing's getting a built engine from Modern Masters. We got our strap down on the Modern Masters trailer. I don't know, Branson, what do you think?
I think it's pretty cool.
You heard it here first. My stepson thinks this thing is pretty cool. Was it cool to pick up down here in Florida?
Yeah.
It was really cool. So we'll see you guys back at the shop. All right, guys, let's check the oil in my Super Duty. How clean it is and if it's still full, and still clean.
Testing, testing, testing.
All right, guys, I couldn't do everything I do without the support of my family. And on this trip, I brought my 3 miniature tow haulers. These guys have helped me a part of the way, and since they're on spring break, they may or may not have gotten to go to Disney World for the first time. But again, I wouldn't be able to do the tows and the late nights and everything without them, so big shout out to my family.
All right, Anthony, I put the fan in upside down, so we're gonna have to redo that.
And then shout out to my Power Stroke. This thing has been keeping me going for 3 years now, hasn't missed a beat. 700 horsepower, fully built truck. I love this thing. I did, however, hit a little yellow pole at dinner one night with Anthony. I didn't see the pole, it was like this tall.